I asked for help and I didn't get it. I asked for help again and it didn't work, and it just got worse. But I kept asking for help, and that's what I want to emphasize, that just because you ask someone for help and it doesn't work doesn't mean that you cannot be helped. It just means it was the wrong choice, or it was the wrong person, or they didn't understand what you're on about. So I kept going because I was getting more and more desperate to get that answer. You see, I went to my doctor first to say, look, I want to talk to somebody. And he offered me a course of antidepressants. And I said, no, I don't want pills. I want to talk to somebody. And I left his office pretty hacked off, because I didn't expect that. But grudgingly, he referred me to a psychologist who was useless. But anyway, just hearing antidepressants didn't actually register with me that maybe I was depressed. It just did not sink in. I didn't know until I got to my final psychologist, my second psychologist and final one. And she asked me to fill in a little questionnaire, which I use today because I've been through it. I trust it. It's efficient. And she said to me, Peter, you describe yourself as rather depressed. And that was almost the best day of my life, because now I knew that something was wrong, but I wasn't wrong. I wasn't a person gone wrong, but something wasn't right, but it could be fixed. And that was a massive revelation. And that weight lifted off my shoulders.
Peter, would you mind sharing? There's someone who's listening. Could you share some of those signs that you actually witnessed yourself, that if somebody said, well, what should I look for, Peter? What would you say?
Signs of being depressed.
Yes.
They are very different from person to person. There is one label called depression, but that doesn't mean everybody experienced the same thing. So I was a high functioning and active depressive. I got all my education, basic, secondary, tertiary. I got my master's degree and a bachelor's whilst being depressed and suicidal. You know, it was hard work. I didn't have much joy in life. I said no to things where others would want to explore. I had the most ludicrous excuse for not wanting to go to a Tina Turner concert in Copenhagen.
I love Tina.
So do I. But at that time, I came up with some lame negative excuse for not wanting to go. So I was always holding myself back. No, I didn't want things. I didn't like it, even though I hadn't tried it, but I just knew I wouldn't like it. And I wasn't very good in my relationship. It wasn't the reason why we broke up, because it takes two to tango. It takes two to make and to break a relationship. But living with someone who is depressed is not easy, because we are not easy people to be around, because we can always, like that, find the negative. But I wouldn't say that my experience is everybody's experience. You have to be careful about jumping to a conclusion which says we have the label, therefore everybody experienced this and that. No, they don't. There are those who can't get out of bed. You can be depressed without being suicidal. It doesn't come as a given that because you are depressed, you're also suicidal. We only talk about depression when our depressed mood has persisted for 2 weeks or more. So if you have a bad day, if you're down in the dumps and a couple of days later you're back to your old normal, you haven't been depressed. You've just had a bad day or two. So we have to be careful about the language we use. Oh, I'm so depressed today. No, you're not. Depression builds up and builds up. You don't become suicidal overnight. It builds up and it builds up, and you become more and more unhappy with life. You know, the typical reason for wanting to take your own life is not a desire to die. It's a desire to not live the life you're living.
Wow.
There is a subtle difference there, but nobody wants to go, oh, I want to die. No, I don't like this life. I can't stand this life. What's the out? Well, that's suicide. Unless you go and seek help. But there's a lot of people who don't seek help because they are afraid
Yes.
of the stigma of what other people will think. Will I lose my job? Will I not get my promotion? Will my family think I'm useless? Will my partner leave me? You know, all that stuff is still there. And a lot of people think asking for help means you're weak, because if somebody helps you, you must be weak. Actually, it's the exact opposite. My clients like it, appreciate it when they hear that I too have been through the ringer. It gives them confidence that they are talking to someone who is not just speaking from a textbook perspective, but from a real life crunch point perspective. And then we move on. Do I have another book in me? Yes, I do. I'm sure I do. What is it going to be about? You know, I don't know yet. I have a number of options, number of ideas, but they haven't come together yet. Whereas when I wrote this one, it had all come together in my head. It was just a question of structuring the thoughts and the ideas and get them onto paper, and the rest of the whole process, which I had help with. I didn't invent it all myself. I had coaching on how to write a book. And I have learned that method, and I like that method, and I'm going to use it again. And for this one, well, there was a team behind making this one
Wow.
a #1 bestseller in 11 countries across 77 categories on Amazon. There was a team behind that who knew that stuff. I don't know that. You see, I don't know everything. I haven't got the answer for everything. Nobody does. And the more you are self-aware about that, the better qualified you are, I think, to do what you do, because you don't overstep your boundaries and dive into things where you become a rank amateur just selling snake oil.